it's April 22nd, 2009, and 17-year-old Brittanee Drexel, who's a junior at Gates Chili High School, says goodbye to her family and heads out the front door of her home near Rochester, New York, to spend spring break with her friend who lived just a few miles down the road. The friendly goodbye was a nice break from the 2 days of arguing that had been going on between Brittanee and her mom. You see, Brittanee had wanted to drive down to Myrtle Beach with some friends for spring break, but her mom said no because she didn't know those particular friends and they were older than Brittanee. So the two compromised and Brittanee was allowed to stay with her friend that lived down the road. The only issue with Brittanee staying with her friend that lived a few miles away is that Brittanee wasn't staying with her friend that lived a few miles away. She had lied to her mom and was headed to Myrtle Beach. Brittanee wasn't a horrible, defiant teenager. She was actually a really good kid who was lashing out after back-to-back pressures had slammed her in the face. Brittanee and her boyfriend John were going through a rough patch. Brittanee's biological father, who had abandoned her as a baby, had just come back into her life. Brittanee's mom and stepdad, who Brittanee considered her father, were in the middle of a heated divorce. So running off to Myrtle Beach for a few days to relax seemed like a good idea. And for the first few days, Brittanee pulls it off. Her mom has no idea where she is. But 3 days after arriving in Myrtle Beach, her boyfriend John calls Brittanee's mom and starts word vomiting. He is panicked and in one breath tells Brittanee's mom that Brittanee lied, she went to Myrtle Beach, and now she's missing. John tells Brittanee's mom, whose name is Dawn, that he and Brittanee had been in near constant contact up until a few hours ago. He said they were in the middle of a texting conversation and she just stopped responding. He said he called the friends that she had driven down with, but they weren't with her and had no idea where she was. So police are called and questioned the girls Brittanee had been with. But as it turns out, the girls said they weren't getting along with Brittanee and they separated from her earlier that night, so they had no clue where she was. Surveillance footage shows Brittanee leaving the Blue Water Resort where she had visited with one of her friends, Peter, someone she knew from back home. At 8:45, Brittanee heads back to her hotel, the Bar Harbor Hotel, because one of the girls she wasn't getting along with wanted her shorts back that Brittanee had on. Brittanee is seen on surveillance leaving Peter's hotel and on Ocean Boulevard for a few seconds. But by the time the next camera picks up, Brittanee is gone. Within seconds, she has vanished. Police start tracking Brittanee's phone, which almost immediately starts traveling south, giving its final ping 60 miles south of Myrtle Beach in a swampy area of the North Santee River in Georgetown, South Carolina. So police officers bring cadaver dogs, officers, volunteers, the family. Everyone is searching for Brittanee where her phone last pinged, but they find nothing. The case eventually grows cold, but even though there weren't any updates, the FBI was still actively working the case, going through every person in the area on the sex offender registry list to see if anything about them sparked their interest. And then one day, they ran across the name Raymond Moody. And his name stood out from the hundreds of others because Raymond Moody was in Myrtle Beach at the exact same time Brittanee went missing. Police were able to obtain a search warrant for a motel room that he had been living in at the time of the disappearance, but they didn't find any evidence. And since being in the same vicinity as a person doesn't equal guilt, they moved on. It's now 2016, 7 years since the disappearance, and a man serving a life sentence comes forward saying that he personally witnessed Brittanee being sexually assaulted, beaten, shot, and then thrown into a swamp for alligators to eat. When police ask who did it, he names Timothy Deshawn Taylor. Police interview Timothy Taylor, who strongly denies the allegation, but for years the FBI is convinced this is their guy. They're convinced so much, in fact, that they tell Brittanee's family Timothy Taylor was responsible for Brittanee's disappearance and murder. But eventually, due to a lack of evidence, police eliminate Taylor as a suspect, and once again, the case grows cold. Then 2019 rolls around, and a woman named Carrie Harding comes forward after hearing that Raymond Moody was a person of interest in the case. Harding tells investigators to take a closer look at Moody because not only was she kidnapped and sexually assaulted by Raymond Moody, 7 other young girls had been assaulted by him too. In fact, those assaults landed Moody a 40-year prison sentence. But, as we all know, sentences don't always mean that much, and in 2007, after just 20 years in prison, Moody was released. He moved in with a man named Ernie Merchant. Not only did Raymond and Ernie meet in prison, they had been in a long-term relationship in prison. They stayed together for a few years after Moody was released, but eventually the relationship ran its course and Moody moved out of Ernie's home. But one night, 2 days after Brittanee went missing, Ernie was awoken in the middle of the night to find Raymond Moody trying to take some shovels and other tools from the house. Ernie reports seeing Moody's face, neck, and head bloodshot red with open claw marks. So with this new information, Raymond Moody is brought in for an interview. And in May 2022, the FBI announces that Moody had been arrested after confessing to Brittanee's murder. So Raymond Moody pleads guilty to murder, kidnapping, and criminal sexual misconduct on October 19th, 2022, and is sentenced to the rest of his life in prison. In exchange for the Drexel family allowing a portion of Raymond Moody's property to remain in a trust for his grandchildren, he promised to tell the entire story of what happened. And what happened is mind-blowing. Raymond Moody claims that he and his girlfriend, Angel Voss, were out hunting for a victim that night. They saw Brittanee walking alone, pulled over, and Angel Voss asked Brittanee if she needed a ride back to her hotel. Once they get Brittanee in the car, Raymond Moody pretends to be lost and tells Angel Voss that she should take over driving. He then gets into the back seat and restrains Brittanee. To keep Brittanee calm, he tells her that he does this all the time and he would release her as soon as the City Chamber of Commerce paid a $5,000 ransom. Raymond Moody and Angel Voss then drive Brittanee to a tent which they had already pitched. Moody left Brittanee alone with Angel to drive back to their apartment and get sex toys. Then he comes back and sexually assaults Brittanee while Angel Voss watches. He says when he's done, he then strangled Brittanee with a nylon cord, stabbed her through the heart with an ice pick, and dumped her body. With the new information, in January 2025, Angel Voss was sentenced to 18 years in prison for her role in the murder of Brittanee Drexel.